graduate studies together at Harvard, which is, I think it's known here as the Emory of the North. So today, you've heard a series of findings from Richie. Today he's going to talk about how the brain responds to the pain of another person and how contemplative practice alters that response, which is the basis of compassion. And I'm going to, Richie, ask you to try to hold that in 20 minutes.
Thank you, Your Holiness. It's wonderful to again be with you, and always an inspiration. I'm very grateful for your time. What I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about work with compassion meditation specifically, and I'm going to address three questions. One is, what neural circuits are engaged by compassion training in expert practitioners? The second question is, does compassion training in novices, individuals who are just starting this kind of practice, engage the same or different circuits in the brain? And the third question is, what is the impact of compassion training on pro-social or altruistic behavior? So, the first question, what circuits are recruited by the voluntary cultivation of compassion in experts? And I want to just very briefly review our key findings. This is in a study we did with 15 expert practitioners. And the area of the brain that you see circled there is an area called the anterior insula, which is an area that has a map of the visceral organs in the body. So, for example, and the way we probe the compassion practice is we present sounds while the practitioner is meditating. And we have negative sounds that, for example, are sounds of a baby crying or a mother screaming. We have neutral sounds, and we also have positive sounds like laughter. And what is particularly interesting is that the expert practitioners show a big increase in the activity of this brain region, particularly in response to the sounds of human suffering. When those sounds are presented, there is a large increase in activation in that area, and the novices show very, very little change. And the figure in the upper right-hand corner simply indicates that when practitioners as well as novices rate the quality of their practice, for the experts, it doesn't matter very much whether the quality is rated as not so good or very good. But for the novices, there's a big difference in when they rate their quality as good in terms of clarity, they show more activation in this brain area. There are two other important parts of the circuit that are changed in compassion meditation that we find, and one I'll come back to a little later, which is the one on the left, and that is the amygdala. And the amygdala is an area of the brain that is important in generating emotional responses. It's important in identifying salient, important information in our environment. And it also is important for detecting threat and suffering. And in that area of the brain, particularly in response to the negative sounds, the practitioners show a large increase in activation during compassion meditation. And the area on the right is an area called the temporal parietal junction. It's in the back of the head. And this is an area that has been very important in perspective taking. taking another person's perspective. So this is all the experts, and I'll come back to particularly the amygdala finding because that is different in the novices. And it is a question that I'd like to ask for holiness, but I'd like to turn now to this second part of the research on expert practitioners, and just tell a little story. When I first met you, Your Holiness, in 1992, you asked if we would give a lecture to the young monks in the Namiel Monastery, and we were with Francisco Varela at the time. And we placed an electrode cap with sensors on Francisco's head. And we had computers, and we were showing the young monks the brain recordings. And we thought rather than giving a dry scientific lecture, we'd actually give a demonstration. And we were placing the electrodes and standing in front of Francisco, and then when everything was all set up, we moved away so everyone can see the recordings. And all 200 monks just started laughing hysterically. And we thought they were laughing because Francisco looked funny with the electrode cap. And what they were laughing about was that we were interested in studying compassion and placing electrodes on the head rather than on the heart. So it took us 20 years to get back to this. And actually, Barbara will talk about the heart as well. But what we find is that during compassion meditation, the experts actually show an increase in their heart rate. Their heart rate beats more quickly compared to novices. But what's most interesting is that when you look at the coupling, the connection between the brain and the heart, what we see in the red of the practitioners, that coupling is much stronger for the practitioners during compassion meditation. The CO stands for compassion meditation, and the N is during the neutral state. So only during compassion meditation is there a coupling, a connection between the heart and the brain in the expert practitioners. So this is something we think is potentially very important, and it indicates that the compassion practice is facilitating the communication between the heart and the mind.
What about compassion? Is there a corresponding increase?
There is a slight increase, but it's not, the heart rate increase is larger. And it comes back down just after the practice. So the next question, the last question, the last set of questions I'll turn to is whether short-term compassion training can make a difference. And many people frequently ask me when I talk about our studies as long-term practitioners, they say, what about me? I will never be able to practice for that many hours. Can short-term practice make a difference? And so this is a study where we looked at just 2 weeks of practice. And we compared 2 weeks of 30 minutes a day with a comparison group that was taught cognitive reappraisal, which is derived from cognitive therapy, which Philippe, I think, will talk a little bit about as well. And cognitive therapy is the elements of the compassion training we use involved contemplating and visualizing the suffering and then the freedom from that suffering for different categories of people, beginning with a loved one, then moving on to themselves, to a stranger, to a difficult person, and to all beings. They often use the phrase, may you be free from suffering, may you experience joy and ease. And they were instructed to notice the visceral sensations, particularly in the area of the heart, heart as they were engaged in this practice, and they were instructed to feel the compassion emotionally and not to simply repeat the phrases cognitively. And then what we did is we did brain scans before and after the 2 weeks of training. And then at the end, we gave the participants tasks to measure their altruistic behavior. And so to measure the altruistic behavior, we used tasks that are similar to what Ernst Fair uses, the economic decision-making tasks. And in this particular task, a person can donate a certain amount of money to the recipient, and if the donation, the amount they give, is very unfair, what we call the third party can use some of his money to actually take away money from the dictator and give it to the recipient to make it a more altruistic transaction. And in this case, they're using real money that we give them, and the amount of money they're left with is how much they actually paid. And so, of compassion training makes people behave more altruistically. So on this hard-nosed measure of economic decision-making, we actually find that just 2 weeks of practice compared to cognitive reappraisal has people behaving more altruistically. Now, one of the fascinating things in this